I remember watching that game, and it looked like they were going to lose, right? It's pretty amazing, the points he scored in the amount of time. And it looked like they were going to lose, but he was able to reverse that, and they won. And some things in life are like that. But some things in life seem irreversible. Remember when I was little, I watched Superman. And there was this one time that Lois Lane, she died. And it was in a car wreck. And Superman was upset, so he goes and he flies. I got a picture here. And he flies around the planet and reverses, it turning. And then it kind of turns time back. So he's able to save her. And that's pretty awesome. I wish I could do that sometimes. When I say something stupid to my wife, I wish I could fly around it. When I eat something bad, I wish I could fly around it to take it away. Or sometimes, like when something happens to somebody, an accident, you wish that you could just, go back in time and help with that. But what do you do when you have a setback? And a setback is a loss of progress, a defeat of a plan, or reversal of good fortune. Anything that sets you back. What do you do when you have a setback and it seems irreversible? For some of us, like if we've lost a loved one, you feel that you will never be whole again. You lost your job and that was your identity. Your marriage is so far gone it seems there's no hope. You have blown it and you feel overwhelming shame and disappointment in yourself. You've been trying to have kids for a long time and you want a family, but the doctor says that can't happen. You just feel like you can't go on. It will never be the same. And you just can't climb out. How do you trust God when the setback seems irreversible? And we're going to look at Job today, and we're going to talk about him because that's what he did. He had a comeback. He had a setback that looked irreversible, and then he came back. Now, sometimes the irreversible, it is irreversible, but we can still have a comeback. It might look a little different than what we thought before. So, and if in his day, Job was a wealthy man, the wealthiest man in the world. He was a very powerful man, and in a single day, he lost everything. Okay, in a single day, his sons and daughters were killed. In a single day, he had natural disasters destroy his crops and his livestock. He also got an incurable disease that was very painful. So he had everything, and then in a day, this happened. And if we read Job 30, 26 to 27, it says this, and I want you to listen to this, because I believe in a crowd this size today that some of you feel like this. It said, I looked for good to come, but evil came instead. I waited for some light, but darkness fell instead. The churning inside of me never stops, and waves of misery crash over me. I'm going to read it again. It said, I looked for good to come, but evil came instead. I waited for some light, but darkness fell instead. The churning inside of me never stops, and waves of misery crash over me. That's in Job 30, 26 and 27. The first thing, when Job loses everything, we see that he does is he tells God exactly how he feels. In Job 1:20, it says, Job stood up, tore his robe in grief, and shaved his head. Then he fell down to the ground and worshipped. Job 7:11 says, I can't be quiet. I'm angry. I have to speak. Now, I remember when I was at Paley Christian, I was on my way to church, and we had just kind of fixed up our house. We had got new carpet. I was on the way. Trace was not very old, and Courtney calls me, and she says, hey, you remember when you were painting? And I said, yeah. She said, you didn't put the paint up. And I said, okay. And she said, Trace spilled it all over the carpet. So, I'm on the way, and I'm almost ready to cry because I'm thinking this is expensive. He has spilt this paint on the carpet. I pull into the parking lot of the church, and I'm just sitting there like this. Someone knocks on the window, you okay? And I'm like, I'm praying. I'm okay. So I go inside, and I feel this way, and then somebody comes up to me, and they say, how you doing? And my response was, I'm awesome. I'm doing great. And that is kind of what we do, isn't it? We don't share our emotions here. How you doing? I am blessed. I am so blessed. If I was any more blessed, I couldn't stand it. Even though, sometimes our life is falling apart, we don't like to show our emotions. Is there any ladies here, your husband comes home and he says, "Hun, I'm just a roller coaster of emotion today, and I want to share my feelings." Does that ever happen? Well, it probably doesn't, right? But I asked yesterday for you to pray for me when I'm preaching, and I said, show me your favorite, the emoji that you use the most. And I know with emojis, it makes it easier to show emotion. I wish when my wife said, "Chris, how do you feel?" I could say, "That one. I feel like that." It'd be real easy. I mean, everybody expects us, because we're Christian, to look like this emoji here. They want us to look like that, right? They want us to smile. They want us to be happy. But sometimes we feel like this, right? Does anybody ever use that emoji? The frowny face? Yeah, sometimes we feel like that, but they want us to feel happy. They want us to look happy, even though we feel like that. Or we might feel like this, like we want to feel calm, right? We want to not let anything bother us. We're okay. We want to feel like that, but we might feel like this. We might be upset. We might be crying. We might be hurt. There might be something going on, and we can't put on that smiley face because this is how we feel. Or we might feel like this. Someone might have made you mad. A lot of times before we get to church, this is how we show up in the parking lot. But then when we come in here, we're the smiley face. It's crazy, right? Or we might feel like this. So I know Frank feels like that sometimes working with us. We have all these emotions, and emotions aren't bad. Emotions are given to you by God. He had emotions. He created those emotions. It's okay to have feelings. It's okay to have emotion. And in here we see Job tells God how he feels. He doesn't try to hide it. He doesn't do anything like that. And as Christians, we don't always have to be smiling because we are people and we are real, right? Again, do you think he smiled? I'll try to smile while I read this. Ready? I looked for good to come, but evil came instead. I waited for some light, but darkness fell instead. The churning inside of me, it never stops, and waves of misery, they crash over me. That, he didn't say that like that. No, he's in agony. He's in pain, and it's okay sometimes to be like that. My daughter Paisley, we were cleaning this week, and I handed Paisley something, and I said, "Can you go put this up?" And she said, "Sure." It was a stroller. So she takes it, she walks across the room, she folds it up, she pauses, she turns around, she looks at me. I know something's wrong. She has panic in her face. She starts screaming, she starts crying, she's running towards me, and I notice as she's coming that she has folded it up and stuck her finger in there, and she has smashed her finger. With this hand, she's squeezing it, and she doesn't realize that it's putting more pressure on her finger, okay? So she's running to me, she's crying, she has that, and as she gets to me, she's saying, "Daddy, Daddy," because she wants me to help her, I say, "Hey, hold on for a second. You're being awful selfish. I want you to tell me how much you love me before I help you get your finger out of that, okay?" And then she did, and I said, "Listen, I also want you to tell me how much you love your brothers and sisters, Now, here's the thing. I did not do that. My wife would cut me in two if I did. I ran to her. And listen, sometimes I think we think God, I used to pray, and when I would come to God and I mentioned myself, I would often ask for forgiveness. God, forgive me for being so selfish. But here's the thing, when Paisley ran to me and she's in pain, I ran to her. I don't want her to be in pain. I want her to be okay. And here's the thing, we have the Lord's Prayer, and it tells you a template that you can use to pray. But there are other prayers in the Bible, and even Jesus did it, where there are people, David, Jesus, they're crying out to God because something is going on in their life. And I want to tell you today, it's okay to do that. Feel free, to cry out to God. Feel free to tell God how you feel because He cares and He wants to know. You need to be honest with God when you talk to Him. We live in a society where, especially in this Christian community, can we talk about self-care? Go ahead and throw that up there. When we think about self-care, we think about stuff like this. People, and not that there's anything wrong with this stuff, but we often think that if we do that, we're being selfish. There's hashtags of self-care, self-love, me time. Society has taken the concept too far, but Christians go to the opposite extreme. The hashtag love yourself on Instagram has been used over 27 million times, while the hashtag love others has been used less than 500,000. But we think if we take care of ourselves, we're being selfish. We neglect ourselves in the process. We think self-care equals narcissism. Listen, Mark 12:30 and 31 says this. It says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There's no greater commandment than this. Now, we read that, and we want to love our neighbor as ourselves, but listen, I want you to catch it. He says, as yourself. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And I would venture to say there are some people here that wouldn't want to love their neighbor as they love themselves, because they don't do a very good job at that. It's okay. I'm not talking about being narcissistic. I'm not talking about being conceited. I'm talking about being able to spend time with the Lord, being able to tell Him, taking care of yourself. Listen, if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't have this communication with God, how are you going to help anyone else if you're broken down and busted? You're not. It's okay to take care of yourself, because it's going to make you better to help others. It doesn't say love your neighbor and belittle or neglect yourself. And we do that. Sometimes we think it's showing humility. Jesus wants you to love and value yourself as His beloved child in creation. Ask yourself this. Think about this right now. Would I want my dearest friend or family member to treat themselves the way I'm treating myself? Listen, you are a child of the King. And you're valued in that way. You're important. You matter. Jesus cares about you. It's okay to go to Him and tell them how you feel. It's okay when you're hurt to do that. It's okay if you don't pray for me when you're hurting and you want to tell Him what's going on in your life. That's okay. When we talk to God, we don't need to tell Him how we think we should feel or what we think God would want us to feel like. We need to be honest, and we need to tell Him how we really feel, just like you would want your children to talk to you. Lamentations 2:19 says, rise in the night and cry to your God. Pour out your hearts like water to the Lord. Lift up your hands to Him. Plead for your children as they faint with hunger in the streets. Saying to get up, cry out to the Lord. Tell Him about what's going on. When I was at Tulip Street, I was a student pastor. I was there for a few years. And while I was there, I remember I had 2 students, as I was there, pass away. Okay. One passed away of cancer. He looked like he was going to be okay. Everything was going to be all right. And one night, his kidney shut down and he died. Another one was in an accident and he passed away. And here's the thing, when you have students in your youth group, you love them like they're your kids. And they were gone. And that same time, unless you're Ryan you don't love them like they're your kids, right? Remember, hey, Daniel, remember that? So we saw one of Ryan's students, and he was like, hey, Ryan. And he was like, hi, right? So this joke. He loves his kids too, but you love them like they're your own. Chesney has heart surgery in that same time, okay? So 2 students pass away. Chesney has heart surgery, and then in the next few months, 2 students at the school in which I was doing youth ministry at commit suicide. They asked me to go into the school to counsel these kids. And also, we had a dad of a family of 4 pass away at 40 years old. And in that, I was there too, because the student was in my youth group. And at the end of that time, I felt very empty. And I felt very hurt. I felt very much like I didn't have anything to give, because I had not offered up anything to God, but I had been going to other people. I took a year out of ministry that year, and I focused on me and God and how this works, because I didn't know if I was ever going to do this again, because, again, I was hurt. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I can tell you that it made my life a lot better. I came out a lot stronger. I had to focus on myself so I could help others. And it's okay to do that sometimes. If you were God and Job, he's talking to you, how would you react to that? Would you get angry? Is that what God did? He didn't. Because God understands Job, and God understands you, and He also understands your hurt. God isn't surprised when you say, I don't like this. This stinks. It hurts. Who do you think created your emotions? Who do you think gave you those? God did. So we need to be honest when we're going to God. We need to remember God's goodness and refuse to get bitter. Job said, I came naked from my mother's womb, and I shall have nothing when I die. The Lord gave me everything I had, and they were His to take away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. That's Job 1:21-22. So, Job says, he had nothing when he came to this world, have nothing when he comes out. Blessed be the name of the Lord. I want to say that I believe this is true. I know it is because I have 4 kids, and I was there when they were born. I watched every one of them be born. It was amazing. It was cool. And I can tell you from being there, when they were born, they were naked. They didn't have nothing, When Trace was born, he didn't have a briefcase of money or anything like that. And, they didn't have a stuffed unicorn. They didn't have anything. They came to this world with nothing. I've also done funerals, and when you do a funeral, you know that people, when they die, they go away with nothing. You come with nothing, you go with nothing. And the things that we have, God gives us, and they are blessings. They're His to take away. They're His to give. We have a job, and we might be blessed because of that. Some reason we've lost that job. And can we say God gives and God takes away, even though that we don't understand? He didn't become bitter at God. We weren't promised a perfect life. Like this is earth. This isn't heaven. Things are going to go bad. Things are going to go wrong because we live in a broken world. And who are we bitter at today? Bitterness never helps anybody. If you're bitter, you can be bitter, and the person that you're bitter at, they don't even know it, and they don't even care, and you are hurting yourself. It's like a cancer. It grows. He didn't become bitter. He didn't become bitter at God. He didn't become bitter at other people. He remembered God's goodness. And sometimes the only thing we can do is remember God's goodness and let His truth wash over us. I have a family picture that I brought. It's one of my favorites. And if you look at it, you'll see there's us, and then there's these 2 shadows, okay? So there was a period of time in our lives where Courtney and I, we wanted 4 kids. And we had 3, and Courtney, I remember the first time it happened, she had a miscarriage. We told everybody that we were having a child. Everything looked fine, and something happened, and we go to the doctor, and the doctor says, I know you were pregnant, but, you have miscarried. And as we walked out, I remember looking at her, and she was devastated. And I was devastated. And I remember as we drove away, it was just hurtful. I didn't like it. We don't have a funeral. We don't have anything like that. It just happened. The life that we thought that we were going to have was not the same anymore. And then it happened again. And I remember, I could have became bitter at God and saying, and I did sometimes, God, why? Why? I serve you. I love you. Why has this happened to me? But I remember talking to Courtney one day. We were in Target parking lot, okay, and we're crying about this child because I believe that we have 2 children in heaven. We're crying about this child, and in our heads, we think about God's goodness, and I say, let's take this child, and we're just going to give it to Jesus. We're going to hand it over to Him because we know that this is true. We know this is real. We know that Jesus has 2 of our kids. We know that a piece of me and Courtney is with Jesus. We handed that over to Him. And here's the thing. When we concentrate on God's goodness, I'm not talking about the things that I have. I'm talking about that God has created a way for people that pass away for them to be with Him. That's a good God. God has created a way for you, when you're hurt and when you're going through things, to have a relationship with Him. That's a good God. He didn't have to. He chose to because he loves you. When we concentrate on his goodness, and all those other things go away. When we concentrate on him and we know that he can help us in our hurts, no matter what you're going through, it's good. Sometimes I think, when this stuff happens, like we can blame ourselves, can't we? I would say, like, God, why does this happen? Like, did I do something wrong? And maybe, like, if something happens and we lose our job, God is like, what did I do? Or if we end up getting a divorce and we don't really want it, and we say, God, like, what has happened? What did I do? We wonder, and we can blame ourselves. And I believe, and I've done this, like, sometimes if I pray to God, I feel like God is like, Chris, I don't want to hear it, and I don't want anything to do with you. And I'm just being honest. But here's the thing, and I want to tell you, sometimes our heart is deceitful. And what I know about God is true. Okay? So I want you to put those up there, will you? I want you to take out your phone, and I just want you to take a picture of these scriptures. Go ahead, if you want to. I would really appreciate it, because I want you to remember these, all right, here in a second. So go ahead. Try not to get me in there. So, all right, now, this is what I want you to do. I want you to just close your eyes, okay? Can you do that for me? We're not going to pray, but I just want you to close your eyes, and I want you to concentrate on these words. And as I speak, I want you to know, listen, I'm talking to you. I'm not talking about Sally at work. I'm not talking about the person sitting next to you. I'm not talking about your neighbor. Listen, this is for you. When we feel this way, I want you to know this. Close your eyes and let God's truth just wash over you. Listen, in Job 10:12, it mentions that God will never stop loving you. Job 23:14 says God has a plan for your life. Okay, God will never stop loving you, and he has a plan for your life. Okay, Job 23:10 and 31:4. God cares about every detail of your life. He knows the hurts that you go through. He knows what's going on. God is in control of things that you don't understand. Job 34:13, and God will protect you. That's Job 5:11. I'm going to say it one more time. God will never stop loving you. God has a plan for your life. God cares about every detail of your life. God is in control of things that you don't understand, and God will protect you. Okay, you can open your eyes. Listen, those things are true, all right? And your heart might tell you something else. Your heart might tell you that God doesn't want anything to do with you, that when you pray to him, it doesn't matter. It's not true. It's not true, because we know what the Word says. We know what is true about God. God loves you. He wants to be there when you have setbacks, especially when those setbacks feel irreversible. The next thing is to understand that you're not alone. Now, we just said, like, we don't want someone to come in here and you say, hey, how's it going? And they're not fine, but they're like, hey, I'm blessed. But we also don't want you to come in here, hey, how's it going? And you throw up all over somebody, Like, we want you to have people in your life that can help you and that can tell truth to you and that can just sit there with you. Listen, Job 2:11-13, it says, 3 of Job's friends heard of all the trouble that had fallen on him. Each traveled from his own country and went together to Job to keep him company and comfort him. When they first caught sight of him, they couldn't believe what they saw. They hardly recognized him. They cried out in lament, ripped their robes, and dumped dirt on their heads as a sign of grief. Then they sat with him on the ground 7 days and nights. They sat there without saying a word. They could see how rotten he felt, how deeply he was suffering. Those are good friends. He wanted his friends came just to be with him, And sometimes we need friends like that. I remember when Courtney, like when she went through those miscarriages, people would say, and sometimes when bad things happen, people try to say things, right? They want to comfort you, and sometimes it comes across like, why'd you say that? Like people would say, you got 3 healthy kids. Yeah, it's okay. And I would say, I would like to punch your children because you just, I don't want you to say that. Here's the thing. We need friends. I just am sad, and I just want you to be sad with me. I don't want you to tell me how to feel. I just want you to be there. And that's what we need sometimes. We need friends like that. We need to be friends like that. You don't always have to have something awesome to say. Just be there. Just grieve and cry with them. We need friends like that. We need to be people like that. We need to do that. Even Jesus wanted his friends. Matthew 26:38 says, "Then he said to them," he's talking to the disciples, "My soul is deeply grieved." This is Jesus, "to the point of death. Remain here and keep watch with me." He's vulnerable to those friends. 3 of the disciples. He's telling them, be with me. Stay here with me. We need people to be with us as we do these, as we go through life. And I think that's hard because what happens when we feel like that? Well, when I feel like that, I want to be alone, but I think it's good to have those people sometimes. So understand that you're not alone. Surrender your future to God. Friends, his friends, you got friends sometimes that can give you bad advice, but this is Job's wife, okay? And she says to him this, all right? This is in Job 2:9-10. It says, Job's wife said to him, "Are you still trying to maintain your integrity? Why don't you just curse God and die? Just end it." Now that is not very encouraging, right? But Job replied, "You talk like a godless woman." It's a good comeback on his part. Should we accept only good things from the hand of God and never anything bad? So in all this, Job said nothing wrong. So when we surrender our future to God, we understand good things happen and bad things happen. And here's the thing, sometimes you're not going to understand what has happened. And sometimes we're not going to get an answer for what has happened. And it's not going to make sense of what has happened. But you concentrate on those things that we read about God loving you, being with you. You understand that God is good and you surrender your life to him. And the last is this: trust Jesus in every detail of your comeback. This is in John 16:33. It says, "By trusting me, you will be unshakable and assured, deeply at peace. In this world, you will continue to experience difficulties, but take heart, I have conquered this world." He's saying, and we're going to have problems, but he is here and he will give us peace. This is Job 42:10. After Job prayed for his friends, the Lord gave him success again. In fact, the Lord gave Job twice as much of everything as he had been blessed with before. And this turns out great. He ends up getting things back, and it's still devastating what happened to him. And in our lives, again, we might have this picture of what we wanted our life to look back like, and something has happened, and it just can't be that way. And it's hurtful. And it can't be reversed. But we know that we can have a comeback. It might look different than what we expected. But we know God is good and he wants that for us. I don't know what your setback is today. I don't pretend to know. But I know all this has to do with Jesus. We have to come to him. I told you not that long ago, I've been going to the Y in the morning to lift weights with Keegan and Brian LaHue. And one day I come in, and Keegan, he's benching, and I'm going to go next. And he says, "Well, how much would you like to do?" And I said, "Well, whatever you're doing, So I get under there, and I want to tell you something. Keegan is strong. I think there's 425 pounds on there. I couldn't get it up, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, I'm struggling. Keegan with one hand, he grabs it, his muscle is rippling, picks it up, puts it back where it goes, Brian, he helps me. I can be doing these exercises and I'll be looking in the mirror and I look like a goofball. And I'm like, "Is this how I should do this?" And he goes, "No, man, let me show you how to do it." And then he shows me and it works and it helps, So I don't know anything much about, working out like they do. I know that they know, so I go with them and they help me, they help strengthen me. Sometimes it hurts even. And I want to tell you, God, in the same way, none of this matters if you don't come to him. None of it matters if you don't concentrate on Him. You got to come to Him. You got to reach out to Him. You tell Him how you feel. Go to God when you're having a setback. You can come here every week and you can sit where you're at and you can leave here and not go to God, and things, don't be surprised if they don't change. And even if they don't change, when you have God and He's with you, man, it makes all the difference. So today, whatever you're going through, and I know that you guys are going through some stuff, we are here to pray with you. We are here to be with you. We are the family. We are the friends. We want to help you. We want to be within the mess of your life. And today, if you want to pray with somebody, I want you to know it is not a bother to us. We want to pray with you. If you want to come forward and you want to pray with Frank, he's going to be right here up front. I'll be in the back. There'll be some other people in the back. If there's anybody on that back wall, they're there to pray with you, okay? And they want you to come and do that. So maybe you don't know Jesus and you want to know Him. You can come up here today and that can happen for you. Maybe you need a church home and you don't have one. That can happen as well. We can baptize you today. This can be your church home today. Those things can happen today. You can reach out to Jesus today and you can tell Him how you feel. And you can have others walk with you, and you will not have to carry that weight out of here without somebody helping.